Hey everyone. I'm gonna wait for a couple people to come in. Sorry for the week hiatus. We had to get some things together, but we're back. Um, and our guest today will be Claire from Moco for Change. We'll just wait a couple minutes for her. Hope everyone is having a good week. Hi,
Hi, how's it
how are
going?
you? Good.
I am okay. Kind of nervous. Live videos make me nervous for some reason.
Oh yeah, me too. Before I started doing these, I had no idea how to do them and I messed up a lot, but just a little conversation, kind of like an interview style thing.
Sure.
So how's your day?
Um, it's been kind of busy, but making it through. How about you?
Same, yeah, online school.
Yeah,
It
pretty
sucks.
draining. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone here knows who you are, but if not, why don't you introduce yourself and a little bit about your background, where you go and stuff like that.
sure. So, my name is Claire Gelillo. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior in high school. I go to Richard Montgomery High School in Rockville, Maryland, which is in Montgomery County. And I am the president of an organization called Montgomery County Students for Change. And I guess I can provide a little bit of background about that later after I introduce myself. And I'm also the communications coordinator for an organization called Student Voice.
Really cool. And we work with both those organizations, so that's great. We have a lot of experience with Claire and Mocha for Change. So I guess the next question would be talking a little bit about your activism background and how you got involved with Mocha for Change, or if you were involved with activism before Mocha for Change, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so Mocha for Change is really how I began my journey in activism and advocacy. I know that's what you kind of like to refer to it as at Youth Activism Project, like a sort of a journey.
Yeah.
Um, and so I actually got involved with it back when it was called MoCo for gun control, and now would probably be a good time to provide a little bit of context. So MoCo for Change, or MoCo for gun control at the time, was founded in the wake of the Parkland shooting back in 2018. It was a group of students from around the county, both public and private schools, who wanted to come together and do something big to make their voices heard on the national scale, calling for federal gun violence prevention measures to be taken. So they got together and organized a big walkout in 2018, and that's sort of how I came on board. I stuck around for the next year. There was another big walkout for gun violence prevention in 2019. And in between those two walkouts, there was a transition from being MoCo for gun control to MoCo for change, because the members, as the organization was expanding, felt that it was important for there to be a platform in Montgomery County for students to be able to advocate for the issues that they cared about on a broader scale. So it became MoCo for change to tackle a more broad like social justice platform, and then expanding to educational equity and education justice and some other issues. So that's sort of where we are now. And yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember the walkouts very vividly and like the discussions that are brought within our schools. And I remember the conception of Milk for Change when I was in high school. So, and I did participate in both those walkouts as well. So I guess what about the topic piqued your interest specifically?
Yeah, so let me just plug in my phone real quick. So my brother was actually involved with the group towards the founding of it. He wasn't technically one of the founding members, but he was very involved, and he knew the people who started it up. And I remember one day I came home from like a field trip or something, and there were a bunch of these older teenagers in my home planning this huge walkout. And I was just sort of like stunned because I'd never seen something like this before. It maybe like mirrored something I'd seen in the movies of like people coming together to like do something big. And the energy I felt and the passion and the conviction I saw in their voices when talking about why this initiative was important to them, it struck something deep within me to then go do my own research as to what had happened on that day in Parkland and to try to understand the issue more deeply. And it just really resonated with me because I think I'm a naturally very empathetic person, and to see that around the country, people's quality of life or lives were just simply lost due to this issue, and I couldn't justify remaining quiet on it. So that's sort of how I was inspired to take the next step and become an advocate for gun violence prevention.
Yeah, so since that point, how has Moco for Change evolved in the past 2 years? And I guess also, how did you become president?
Sure. So, um, as I said, in between um, the 2018 school year and the 2019 school year, it became Moco for Change to um, give students a platform to advocate for a broader social justice platform. Um, and in the, I believe, 2018 to 2019 school year, the then president, co-president Michael Solomon, um, got the group involved with lobbying for um, something kind of unprecedented in recent years, very unprecedented. It was lobbying the Board of Education to take steps to look into our school boundaries and how those contribute to de facto segregation. And so that kind of spiraled from there after we successfully lobbied them to commission a district-wide boundary analysis to see how school boundaries contributed to de facto segregation, also looking into things like school capacity, um, proximity to school, like are people going to schools that are close by to them, um, and a couple other issues, but it was the socioeconomic and racial factors that really brought the conversation to the forefront of discourse in Montgomery County and beyond, and really sparked, I think, a national conversation about modern day de facto segregation.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that Moco for Change was part of lobbying for that boundary study. In high school, I was like heavily involved with advocating for it because I went to school in the DTC that received a lot of the negative stereotypes that resulted, a lot of things that had to do with our infrastructures that had to do with like the boundary lines and things like that. So I advocated for it a lot. It's really cool that actually didn't know that Moco for Change was involved in that.
Yeah, obviously there were a lot of groups that were supportive of the initiative, but Moco definitely was at the forefront of lobbying the Board of Education to take the initiative seriously and actually go forward with an analysis. And I think that's something we definitely take pride in as an organization. But I think that as things have progressed and as so much attention has been given to the issue of the boundary analysis, it's gotten so many other groups involved, which I think is amazing. And I think we're at a place right now where it's really about coalition building and making sure that we have this unified front to make sure that once the boundary analysis is completed, it's not just one organization at the forefront of saying you need to do something with these results. It's an entire coalition of people from the community, both part of organizations and just individuals that are advocating for it.
That's actually a great segue to my next question about coalition building and how you kind of formed your core group or your executive board. Like, how did you begin to onboard people after you guys established yourselves?
Sure. So the structure of Moco for Change since its beginning has been like officers, executive board, and then general membership. And so when I first came on board, I was just a member. That was during my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, I became one of the communications directors. So then I was a member of the executive board. And then when I became president or co-president in my junior year, we decided that we wanted the executive board to play a bigger role while still keeping all of the members involved in like the highest capacity possible. We felt that in order for the organization to become more sustainable, we needed to have more established leadership and like designated roles for people. So I think that's one of my proudest accomplishments from my previous co-presidency term, was making sure that the executive board had a more power in terms of decision making and running the organization, as opposed to it just being like really centralized in the co-presidency and vice president. So this year, where we're currently at, we have Me, president, because there was nobody else who wanted to be president, I guess, so I ran unopposed. So this is the first time we've ever had one president. And we have a vice president, a secretary, our about, I think, 16-person executive board, and we have over 200 general members, and then we also have school branches in a bunch of public and private schools. The only public high school I think that we're missing right now is Seneca Valley. So if anyone on here is watching and you go to Seneca Valley, please hit me up. Let's start a branch at your school.
So for your first of all, the e-board, that's a really big e-board. I've never like heard of an e-board with 16 people, so it's kind of really cool. Um, so for your general membership, you said you have around like 200 people involved. So if
Yep,
someone wants to get involved, and this is a good question for anyone's here and wants to get involved, how do they go about doing that?
sure. So one of our biggest priorities for this year was to make sure that membership was as accessible as possible. We don't want to like gatekeep the organization at all. We want to get anyone involved that feels passionate about the issues that we're focusing on to get involved. So we actually have an active link right now, bit.ly/join MCFC. If you go to that link, you can sign up to become a part of the organization. You'll be on our email list, and it'll also give you steps to join our Slack and our Remind, and then you can get involved from there. And also, I want to note that last year and this year, a big priority was making sure that our school branches were well established, running, and actively bringing more people into the causes that we're advocating for. We think that by bringing our organization to as local of a level as possible, we will make the organization more representative of the student voice in Montgomery County and easier to just become a part of.
Yeah, I actually was about to ask that, because I feel like Moco for Change did a lot when I was in high school, but they were struggling a little bit with representation from all schools and from the different consortiums. So it's really good to hear that you've expanded your horizons and you're only like missing one high school. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Also, if you want to type that link that you just said like in the comments so people can read
Sure.
it. And anyone who's here and wants to ask Claire any questions, just feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll be sure to answer them. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask about how your operations ran prior to being remotely, like on a day-to-day basis, or like how did meetings work and things like that before, like when things were still in person.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Definitely COVID-19 posed a lot of challenges, and it definitely made us have to reevaluate how we operate on a large scale. But I think in many ways, going virtual has shown us a lot of ways that we can become a more sustainable and accessible organization. Like turnout at meetings has become exponentially larger since we've gone virtual, and hosting more virtual events. We've been able to connect with so many more people. So before COVID-19 and before everything went virtual, most of the stuff was conducted virtually, like through social media and like through GroupMe and everything, text message. But then we would have like the occasional in-person meeting if we had something big coming up that we needed to like talk more informally about. But and like as I said, that very first meeting that I was introduced to Moco for Change and literally happened in my family room. So it used to be definitely more of an in-person operation, but I think that expanding to use these virtual platforms as a means for organizing has been really good for the organization, and I think will make it much more sustainable going into the future.
That's really cool. And it's really amazing to hear. I mean, like the fact that like since quarantine and like COVID has really gotten in the way of things, the fact that you've like onboarded so many new people is really, really amazing. Your social media is like really cool. I feel like that's the biggest, like had the biggest hand in doing that. Like you guys are very, very good with the graphics. I don't know who your graphics person is, but they're really cool.
That's Lena.
Um,
If Lena joins this live stream, she can plug herself. But
Shout out to her.
shout out to Lena.
So what are your biggest accomplishments with Moco for Change? What have you guys done that you're most proud of?
Yeah. I think on the more abstract level, what I'm most proud of and what I find most rewarding is just the ability to get students involved with the decision-making process, with the political process, on all levels. I think that like something that I've been thinking a lot about lately since I'm advocating for Lynn Harris, who is running for the at-large Board of Education seat. Her entire platform is about students and about how the number one way we can tell how we're doing as a school system and just as a society in general in terms of serving young people in the future generation is just by actually hearing their voices and their lived experiences. And I think an organization like ours, as it continues to grow, has the potential to do so much good, because it's actual students speaking on behalf of themselves as opposed to assumptions being made about what our lived experiences are like. Um, and so I think that's what I'm most proud about on that abstract level. In a more immediate way, I think I'm just really happy about the pathways that we've set up for student voice to be heard on like the local, state, and national level. Last year, we planned our very first statewide lobby day for gun violence prevention legislation, which was really great. We had like over 50 people from Moco head up to Annapolis for the day to lobby for, I believe it was 4 pieces of gun violence prevention legislation that were up in the General Assembly. And just to see those connections being made and to see students like walking the halls of the General Assembly was really cool. I think just seeing those things set up, and also the fact that like in Montgomery County on like the local level, having students represented at the table in terms of like the county council and the board of education, I think that that is a rather new development, and I would like to think that an organization like Moco for Change and Moco Steps and Young People for Progress have played a huge role in making that a thing. That if we're making decisions that are going to affect students, which is pretty much any decision that a legislative body makes, that they should actually be represented.
Yeah, and I for one think Moco is like champion in Maryland and probably beyond in like involving students in the process of decision making and things like that. Like I go to the University of Maryland and I meet people from all different counties within Maryland and abroad, and I feel like no one has as much student representation as we do in the board and in the council and just in general. So I feel like it's really cool. And Moco for Change did have a really big part in that. So
Yeah.
so what are your like current initiatives that you're doing right now? What are you working on? What are you putting out there right now?
Sure. So we have done a lot of election related programming in the past couple of weeks and months,
Yeah,
really.
aren't we all?
Yeah, it's been a really overwhelming election season, honestly, and we've been working pretty hard. We just finished up Moco to 100, which was the initiative that we did with your organization, Youth
Yeah.
Activism Project. And just to give a little bit of context about that, Moco to 100, or Montgomery County to 100, was the initiative that we did where we attempted to register 100% of eligible seniors in Montgomery County to vote. We're still trying to gather some numbers to see if we were anywhere near our goal, but still we registered a lot of seniors to get ready to vote in the 2020 election. And even if they weren't eligible to vote in this election, like myself, I will not be 18 by November 3rd, unfortunately. Still making sure that people are pre-registered and prepared to participate in our democracy. And outside of the Moco to 100 initiative, we've been working on a couple of other things. We signed on to the Young People for Progress defund the police demands, and the part of that we want to be most involved with is the issue of SROs, because that's most immediately tied to the work that we're doing as a student organization, but definitely trying to support the rest of the demands. You can check out their Instagram at YP Progress, I believe it is. That might be wrong, but just look up Young People for Progress and you should find what those demands are. And we just came out with our orange ballot, which is our student approved endorsements for pretty much most of the elected offices that are up for election in Montgomery County. And now we're just helping get those people elected, hopefully. And once election season is over, we will turn our attention to the boundary analysis, because that's something that's going to be coming out soon.
Yeah. So I was going to ask about that actually, well, just in general, educational equity. I know you guys do some stuff surrounding that. Is that just the boundary analysis or is there other things?
Yeah, so I can't announce too much on the call, not this call, live, whatever you want to call this, but we definitely do want to expand our scope this year in terms of the things that we're focusing on with education equity, education justice. Definitely wanting to expand our scope. We want to make sure that we see everything through with the boundary analysis, and that's like a long-term project that hopefully we're planting the seeds now for students to be involved with beyond the 2020-2021 school year. But we definitely want to expand our scope to focus on some other education equity initiatives in Montgomery County. So stay tuned. And as I mentioned, I'm involved with the national organization Student Voice, which fights for education equity on a national scale by engaging students locally to be institutional partners in creating student-driven solutions to education and equity. And I feel like it's really, by doing that work on sort of the national scale, it's really forced me to sort of look at MoCo in comparison to other places and like see where there are universal educational inequities and also see where things differ, and also sort of looking at the educational system as a countrywide thing as opposed to just sort of looking at MoCo in a vacuum, because I feel like that's a really easy thing to do if you live here, because MoCo is just such a huge school district. It kind of feels like its own country sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to sort of gain these new perspectives and get wisdom from students who are working on this issue throughout the country.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can get someone from Student Voice on one of these calls so we can learn a little bit more about that and what they do nationwide. But so I'm going to step back a little bit and I guess just ask, what are your biggest takeaways since joining Mocha for Change? Because I've imagined, I know it's a big question, very vague, but like I imagine you've learned a lot in terms of like leadership and teamwork and things like that. So I guess what have you taken away from that?
I have
Have
learned
you
a lot.
grown?
Wow. Yeah. This is, this might, I don't know. I have been thinking about it a lot lately because obviously I've been so involved with it since my freshman year, and I'm now about to graduate high school, and I'm thinking like this organization has sort of just become such a huge part of who I am, and the amount of hours I spend on a daily basis like trying to um, make sure that the work we're doing is meaningful and make sure that the organization is meaningful. And I guess my biggest takeaway is that you can't do it alone. You have to bring other people in. You have to, like, true leadership is like bringing other people in and making sure that there are other people who are a part of the fight. Um, and also, so yeah, I guess like the value of teamwork is one of the huge takeaways. And you have to be passionate about the work. I mean, the conversation about people using this kind of work as a way to resume pad or make themselves look good on paper is definitely a conversation that needs to be had. And I think it's inevitable that there will be people who try to take advantage of it and monopolize it for the sake of their own personal gain, which is wrong. But ultimately, if you're going to make substantive change, you need to actually love the work. You need to actually be passionate about the things you're doing, or else it's pretty much meaningless if you're not going to actually see it through. And like, this is the work that I want to be involved with for the rest of my life, whether I go into like politics or just government or just activism in general. I don't know if I'm going to make a career out of it, but I know that as a citizen and as a person here in this country who cares about other people, I'm in it for the long game.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I've come across many, many resume builders like in my time with the app and just in activism in general. And I will say, like, it just won't take you very far if you don't actually really care about the stuff you're doing, especially if you want to, do it as a career. You have to actually really care about what you're doing. Um, and kind of going along with that, a lot of the people that we recruit have concerns about juggling schoolwork along with activism, or they want to start a group, or they don't know how to like approach people and they're afraid it's going to take too much of their time. So I guess what advice would you give to people who have concerns about that?
Sure. I think in like the realm of self-care, I don't think there's like one right way to do it. Like if there's something you care about, give it what you can give it. Don't sacrifice your own well-being. But there are different levels and different ways of getting involved. Like you don't have to be the one planning, but if you're the one who shows up for the town hall, if you're the one who asks the important questions, that's still a meaningful contribution. So don't think that there's no point in getting involved if you can't be like the main organizer. Like we need people to get involved in whatever capacity they can, because that's how real change happens. But in terms of
So
schoolwork, I am a little bit behind, to be honest.
do you have
So
any like tips on how to like balance it or how you balance it, or do you just, kind of just do it as it comes along?
I think delegation is huge, and like
Right.
making sure that, and this is a lesson that I've had to learn, is like not everything needs to be done by one person. Like you don't need to micromanage. Like other people will do a good job. And if you have, an 18, 16 person executive board, like obviously every person should have a designated role, so that like if you end up being in a position of leadership per se, like other people look to you to delegate tasks, like actually delegate them, and make sure that it's not consolidated power, because that will put you in a really bad position. It puts you in a bad position. It puts everyone else in a bad position. So that's a really, I'm glad that I learned that lesson in leadership early on in life, because I think my personality naturally, like I want everything to go smoothly. Like I want to avoid drama. Um, very non-confrontational person. So like it was hard for me to be like, hey, this is something that you need to be doing. This is not my responsibility. This is your responsibility. This is what you signed up for. This is what you said you wanted to do. So I'm not going to do it because that would be detrimental to my well-being.
Exactly. And that's why we emphasize recruitment and like team building as like one of the first most important steps of like campaign building. And you know Nika obviously, but she's like one of those people like 100%. And you'd think she wasn't because she's such like a seasoned activist, but she's always micromanaging and like sometimes she's just like I have to step back and let other people do things. And if I trust my team, then I trust that they'll do good work. So, yeah. But do you have any like recruiting tips or anything like that? Like how to like if someone's nervous about like asking a buddy to start a group or whatever?
Hmm. Yeah. Like in terms of like starting a new organization, or like or supporting a cause.
Yeah, so like the most common scenario we've seen is someone in middle or high school and like I want to start a group within my school centering around this, but I don't really know how to approach my administrators or I don't know how to talk to other people in that kind of scenario.
Yeah. I would say do your research. If you have something that you believe is right and you have the research to back it up, you are unstoppable, and you will be able to bring other people to your cause. Um, yeah, I guess simply put, just know what you're talking about and know what you're advocating for is right, and other people will come and other people will listen.
Absolutely. So we're nearing the end of our time, but I wanted to ask if there's any advice you want to give, just general advice for young activists, for people who want to like take this far in life, kind of like how you do. And like, I guess you don't see a lot of people starting from freshman year going all the way to their senior year like you have and being so involved and like, not burning out or whatever. But what advice would you give to people who are trying to be like you, I guess?
um, hmm. There's just like so many things in my mind like that have like just surfaced during this call, because I just haven't really had the time to reflect on the past
Yeah.
4 years. It's really interesting. Maybe I could write a book about it. But I think, what should I start with? As I said earlier, just bring people into your team, bring people that um, have unique experiences, but also are like minded and believe in the cause. Bring people in. Don't do it all yourself, because true leadership is enabling other people to also be a part of the work and also become leaders. So just learn the value of teamwork. I think something that I've had to deal with, as I said, I'm a very non-confrontational person. I don't like drama. I don't like conflict. And that's interesting considering that I've gone into the field where conflict is kind of the whole reason why you're there. But like, I don't like, it makes me very uncomfortable when people think that like we're not doing something right. But I think value pushback, understand that if you are receiving negativity and pushback, that is a sign that you are doing something right. It is a sign that you're pushing the needle forward. And that's sort of specific to the work that we did with the MCPS district-wide boundary analysis. We were getting a lot of pushback on that, but you can probably figure that out through looking at some articles about what happened at those public meetings. But yeah, don't be afraid of pushback, lean into it. And yeah, I think teamwork, don't be afraid of pushback, and um, just appreciate the journey. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding work. And um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I 100% co-sign that. I mean, if you're a youth activist, you're probably not doing something right if you don't receive pushback, just because, you have to work on being taken seriously in the first place before you even talk about what you're interested in. And yeah, the boundary analysis would probably be one of the first times I actually received like very blunt pushback from community members and parents and things like that, like straight to my face. It was kind of really shocking. But yeah, that's how you can tell. Like if it goes right, then it will have really positive outcomes.
I could probably tell a funny story about one thing that happened to me during one of those public meetings. And I'm telling you all, if you mess with local politics, it's a wild ride. But this one time, there was this iconic meeting at Julius West Middle School, which is actually the middle school I went to. But they were holding one of the public meetings about the boundary analysis there. And when I got in the room, and it was already weird vibes because there was this whole Facebook group that was like talking bad about all the kids that were advocating for the boundary analysis. I digress. But then somebody was like, come here. Like it was an adult man, and he was like, come here. And I was like, no. And he was like, no, come here. And I was like, okay. There were like 100 other people around me, so it's not like he could like attack me or anything. So I went over and he was like, I love your performances in the school plays. And then I ran away.
What?
It was like the weirdest moment of my life. Like I couldn't tell if he genuinely appreciated my performances in the school plays or if he was trying to intimidate me. I don't know.
It'd be funny if that was the same guy that I encountered at one of the meetings. It was at Kennedy actually. It later came out that he had no kid or any like anyone that has ever went to any Moco high school, but he like just came there to argue with us, and we were trying to figure out more about him and like what was his personal stake in the entire thing, but he literally didn't have one, and then he just got up and left in the middle of it, which is very interesting. So yeah, come across a lot of interesting characters in this county when dealing with local politics.
Yeah,
I
the
agree.
Pandora's box of local politics, especially education. People get pretty passionate about it for good
Yeah,
reason.
of course. I'm very into educational equity as well. Okay, so is there anything you want to amplify for Mocha for Change or Student Voice or anything like that? Use this space to do that if you want.
Sure. As for Mocha for Change, just make sure you're following us on social media. We definitely are pretty active on there in terms of amplifying the things that we're doing behind the scenes and like for you to get involved with. As for Student Voice, we still have our schools, our boards, our education. Is that it? No, I said it in the wrong order. Our schools, our boards, our election. Sorry, it's been a long day. Definitely go check that out. It's our initiative to get students involved with school board elections, hosting school board candidate town halls, registering peers to vote. Deadlines mostly have passed for that, but still, check it out. There's still ways to get involved. Definitely follow Student Voice on social media, doing really great work. And also, if you live in a rural area, there is an event coming up where we're going to be talking about education, equity issues, and other student-related issues in rural areas. So that'll be posted about later today. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of amplification.
So everyone make sure to, I'm going to put this live, like it's going to be saved on our account so people can go back and watch it, but make sure you follow Mocha for Change and Student Voice on social media to be updated on everything she just said. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining. It was so nice talking to you and bonding with you over Moco politics, but yeah,
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot less
of
scary than
course.
I thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah, I'm just like you. Okay.
All right.
Have a nice rest of your day.
Bye,
Bye.
you too.